The governors of the Leys, Cambridge, wish to inform parents of boys attending the school in the autumn term that we have been notified by the government to remove the school to the Athol Palace Hotel, Pitlochry, until further notice. Our school and extensive grounds are required for use as a hospital due to the demand placed on Addenbrooke's, which will be serving both the military and the public.
So next year will be the 150th anniversary of the school, and obviously the evacuation to Pitlochry during the Second World War was a key moment for the school. All three of us, Andrew, myself and Michael, our fathers at different times were evacuated, and so we thought it'd be a nice idea to come back together and then to go up and visit the Athol Palace Hotel where the school was evacuated to in Scotland.
And Michael's father made the film of the trip to Pitlochry.
Yeah, my dad, Paul, he was in the upper sixth when they decided to make the move to Pitlochry from here in Cambridge. This was going to be taken over by Addenbrooke's as an annex for what they expected to be an influx of patients from the war. So the decision was taken to ship the school lock, stock and barrel to Pitlochry. My dad was in possession of one of these wind-up home movie cameras, 8mm, and liked making films. So he and a couple of his buddies made a film of the move to Pitlochry, and that's still available now to see.
When we were told that the school buildings were to be taken over and that the Leys was to go north, a hastily summoned party of masters and boys met at Cambridge to tackle the gigantic task of packing up the school.
Then the great trek began, and the school started its long journey north. Through the night and through the day, the trains rattled haltingly on. Do you remember? 7:30 and still south of Carlisle, and someone had said that we'd get in at 7:20. Perhaps he meant in the evening.
We had to get the train from Cambridge at 7 a.m. and that took us to Bletchley. There we had to get the train going north, the West Coast train it was. There were Leysians sort of coming in from all directions to get the train, quite a lot from Cambridge obviously, which was, we were going to Bletchley, and they were already on the train because it started from London. There were already other Leys boys coming on the train, and then it stopped once or twice, I think, going up, and so we had picked up a few more.
It's now.
If you think back to what making this journey must have been like in 1940, we're enjoying this fast, electric, air-conditioned train, comfortable seats, and all the rest of it goes with modern life. And our forebears, my father in particular, was on this journey. September 1940. They're in a really old train. There's steam walled, of course. No air conditioning, probably steam heat if there was any heat. And they'd been taking the slow lines to allow fruit trains, goods trains to get there faster. They were in priority.
And you were saying, interestingly, what an operation it was. It never occurred to me that so much of the school equipment gone with the train as well. So
yes, if you look at the notes that my father made of the trip, they were taking all the equipment from the school down to the playing fields in the school pickup truck, and then horses with wagons would take it from there to the railway station. From there it was put into rail wagons and freight trains took it presumably by marshalling yards. Eventually it ended up in Pitlochry, and they had to reverse the operation there to get it up to the Athol Palace.
It's what's incredible when you look at the production your father skillfully put together. When, for example, you look at the chemistry labs and you're teaching in the chemistry labs, all the equipment was there. I mean, it wasn't, it certainly, you can't say that the education was hindered.
No, they seem to have taken everything needed for a fully functioning school.
Yeah, what struck me was about, today when we were leaving the quad in Cambridge, and there was a changeover time of lessons, and there were lots of happy boys and now girls, of course, coming in there and having banter with each other and rushing with their books in their hands. And when you look at the video, the film, that happiness and enjoyment of school is there in Pitlochry.
Yes, so some things don't change.
Some things don't change, no, and that spirit doesn't change, and that's a credit to all the staff and the teachers at the school at that time.
The train crossed the border soon after Carlisle, and the Edinburgh section was shunted off. We continued through Glasgow, Stirling and Perth, by now wide awake. After Perth, the scenery began to change. The hillsides near Dunkeld were covered with larch, golden with autumn colours, and the train puffed on through small communities, each with a station. Like signposts on the roads, all railway station names had been removed. Wherever the train stopped, we had to listen for a porter calling out the station name.
The school laid on a special train at 12 o'clock at night to collect all the people who'd ended up at getting to Perth during the day and then take them to the hotel, which wasn't very far, Perth to Pitlochry. So we didn't get to bed very early that night, but it was better going up than coming back.
Just railway and more railway until the Athol Palace became a mythical castle. This shot cost us our second-best cameraman. And then we saw it for the first time, but it seemed miles before the train finally stopped and we were really there. As each train moved north, it picked up a succession of parties for the Leys School Pitlochry. Through a maze of uncertain connections, on chaotic stations at little-known hours in the morning, and at a time when the railways were at their most disorganised, we were brought so that only one boy was temporarily delayed and no one was irrevocably lost. Probably unwashed, almost certainly tired and hungry, we all gave in our tickets at the end. The credit for the organisation of this journey belongs to Mr. Hayward, here seen counting his safely hatched chickens.
So we left Cambridge at 11 o'clock today, and I think when I got off the train at Pitlochry, and I'm sure Michael and Andrew travelled with us today thinking the same things about their fathers, I was thinking about my father as a 13-year-old boy who'd left travelled up with his mother to King's Cross from Basingstoke, and then off here to Pitlochry. How brave he was, and indeed how brave, I think both of us, all three of us would agree, how brave all our fathers were, and appreciative of the love and care they were given by the Leys School on the journey to Pitlochry and their education here.
From this bus, packed with a curious mob and its associated baggage, we caught our first glimpse of Pitlochry and formed our first and probably erroneous impressions. Then the entrance, looking for once just like the photograph in the prospectus, and so up the drive, for the first time, past the waterfall, here seen comparatively empty. All this was new, and it looked as if it was going to be a long, long way when we had to walk. Then at last the hotel. Seems big. Oh look, ducks. The fountain wasn't frozen when we first came, but don't let that worry you, the hotel was there just the same. It's wonderful what one horse can pull up a hill when it really puts its mind to it, and when the trunks are unpacked, away to the garage they go. Everyone has his own idea of the best way to carry them.
We crowded the windows to get a first glimpse of what looked like a Scottish castle. Another grey stone building, much larger and more imposing, standing firm and foursquare, perched on a small hill overlooking the town. Pitlochry Prison, someone said to general laughter.
Well, of course, it was an enormous hotel, and our impressions, or my impressions, were that you've got to find out where to go everywhere, got to find out which room you're in and everything else. All completely different, because it wasn't a school, obviously. Yeah.
We were bussed up to school, where first we were allocated our accommodation. No dormitories of 20 or so boys there, but 2, 3 or 4 boys to each of the hotel bedrooms. I was sharing with 3 other boys of my year, Galloway, Cook and Hayter. We recognised the iron-framed bedsteads, but bathrooms and toilet facilities were definitely a grade higher than we were used to. The corridors were quite long enough for useful hockey practice, soon banned, and they and the rooms were carpeted, much more comfortable than the lino flooring used at Cambridge.
We had 2 whole holidays a term. Nobody went home, of course. We were stuck there for the whole term. And then we always used to organise expeditions to the Tumble Falls, Benivaki, other places, and had a day out. They didn't worry about health and safety or anything. Nobody asked where you were going or what you were going to do. But that was, of course, great fun.
Well, here we are in Pitlochry on day 2. Behind me is the tennis courts that featured in the film, and behind them, slightly further up, is Benivaki, and that's our target for today, to recreate the steps of our ancestors in 1940 to the top.
Benivaki has been defeated almost ignominiously by boys of all sizes, but can still make an imposing picture. There is the path, and there in the distance is Vraki. It's thirsty going in hot weather. That effort obviously calls for refreshment, and then with the summit conquered, back to a bath, or perhaps to read with Mr. Skinner the second book of Kings. When we got up on the first morning of the second term, it was only 6 degrees Fahrenheit, and even the fountain was frozen. For weeks, rugger was no more than a vague possibility in a doubtful future, and we became winter sports enthusiasts. The old hands appeared triumphantly on skis, whilst many of the rest skated on the swimming pool. We even reached the stage of playing unofficial ice hockey house matches, but we couldn't have been very good, as all the referees survived. If you couldn't skate, there was always sledging, and a cameraman can usually find somebody to be spectacular.
We used to walk into Pitlochry occasionally. After lunch, or the midday meal, we had free time up to, I think, about 4, unless you were playing games. But most of the time we weren't playing games because it was all frozen up or snow or stuff. We were tobogganing and skating on the swimming pool.
Rugger, cricket and hockey pitches have all had to be made out of the hotel's Mashie golf course. This was an encounter between masters and boys, and it was meant to be soccer. But although it would have made even Aston Villa's A-team cry to see it, a good time was had by all. Most people had to play rugger in the Easter term as well as in the winter, when the weather allowed. A line out. Watch this movement. Tackle him low. Try, Gibbon. He'll never make it, or will he? Yes, it's over. Or was it?
The classrooms, they used quite a number of big rooms that had been downstairs that had been used for games, things, people sitting around reading newspapers and that sort of thing when it was a hotel. They turned any odd spare rooms downstairs into classrooms.
The downstairs rooms and a few on the first and second floor were set up as classrooms. What had been the ballroom was filled with about 60 desks at the front and over 100 chairs at the back. This enabled it to be used as a common study area during the day, a chapel each morning and evening, a preparation room for East House, and on Saturday nights as a cinema. A small lounge and the bridge room on the ground floor were also fitted with desks, and this allowed each of the 5 houses to have a room for preparation each morning and evening. The dining room, which was the same size as the ballroom, had 6 long tables, and the 3 nearest to the windows were given to East, North A, and school houses. Those near the door were shared by West and North B.
Well, I suppose one of the interesting things was each, you have there are houses, East House, School House. Each house had its own floor. And quite often there was one house would attack the other house. But if the masters slept on the ground floor, or actually the first floor, I think, and if they knew anything was going on, somebody was keeping a watch, and if the masters came out, everybody was rushing to their rooms to get into bed quick.
The Tunnel Falls are very different from the calm of Barnes Pool or Grantchester Meadows. Here is Black Spout, and there's the head prefect. Good morning, John. Makes you feel wet to watch it.
Yes, I remember the Black Spout very well because I used to, just where the pool was at the bottom of that, I used to catch trout. And then if you caught yourself a trout, after the main meal was over, you could go into the kitchen, they'd cook it for you and you could eat it. Wow. In the kitchen.
Although adolescent boys were well known for their huge appetites, I have no recollection of being really hungry. We were never short of filling foods like bread and potatoes, and had plenty of energy for games and outdoor activities. And so, many historians of wartime Britain have written, our health on the simple diet was good, and although the catering staff must have had many headaches, thinking how to feed us, we kept very well.
Well, don't forget it was wartime. I think 8 boys sat round a trestle table, and if one boy got a piece of meat in his stew, you were lucky. The rest was all swedes and potatoes and things. It's a very basic food, but then it was basic everywhere. There wasn't any food about, couldn't get it all rationed.
Hello, this is very energetic for a summer day. What's all the hurry about? Oh, I know, it must be the tuck shop, and what they hope will still be on those shelves when they get there. Who said there were no queues in Pitlochry?
We were allowed 30 shillings a term to spend in the tuck shop. And they had to keep it down to that because some of the rich boys got a lot of money. So they were particularly instructed it mustn't be more than 30 shillings. And then we got our milkshakes and things in the tuck shop.
Thank you very much, Daddy, for your substantial tip. I ought to be careful and not forget its value. We've got a drawer for food, and James brought quite a bit of jam and stuff from Ireland. Well, 5 pounds actually, and some biscuits and half a cake. I found I still have 2 more bars of chocolate you, and he had 8, because he couldn't use his ration card in Ireland. It's a pity we can't get biscuits without points, but I'm going to make the jam last, thanks to you.
And the other thing I remember is that we used to get at 4 o'clock a cup of tea and a rock cake. Now that was a rock cake. Nobody ate their rock cakes. And then the master's rooms, being on the first floor, were above a whole row of cycle sheds with tin on them. And so on our last night of term, everybody got in a room where it was overlooking the tin shed. And we all chucked our rock cakes down, making a terrific noise.
There was an influx of oranges in Pitlochry a week ago, and altogether I had 4. The school gave us 2 each at 2 different meals, and we bought 4 downtown. I tried to get some more to send you, but there weren't any more. Perhaps you've had a flood too, and the grocer sent you some. 4 is an awful lot for one person, isn't it? Now that you aren't quite so hectic, Mummy, could you consider that second clothes list I was talking about? Even if it's only just the obvious things you can think of. But don't bother if you haven't time.
And of course the other famous thing was at the in the dining room, the ceiling was fairly tall. And at the end of term, you had 2 pats, 1 pat of margarine, 1 pat of butter, like you get given in a hotel. And at the end of term, the thing was to be able to get your knife and flick a pat of butter, and if you flicked it hard enough, it would stick.
Thanks awfully, Daddy, for bringing me to the station so early in the morning. I'm enclosing the plan of our new room, which we've had our eyes on for some time. It really is a wizard one, and the beds are just amazing. Squashy isn't the word for them. The 2 windows make it very fresh and airy and bright, and the sun in the summer will rise directly onto them. We have a lovely view down the valley and over the river. There is a small 2-decker table on which we've put the wireless and my accordion. The carpet is better than most, and the pictures make a terrific difference to the room. Unfortunately, our closed drawers are outside in a wardrobe. Anyway, we are jolly pleased.
We are getting on well in biology, but there's a tremendous amount to know, and the different species are apt to be muddling. The trouble is, I find, that Jeff, the biology master, can't answer the most interesting questions. He says there are a lot of whys that can't be answered by the best of biologists. We've just done Taniosolium, or the tapeworm, and it's just grim to think of 12 feet of this creature inside you, and the disappointing part is that Jeff isn't at all worried about it and says any of us might easily have one. Perhaps that's why I'm not gaining weight.
I had my piano lessons for much of my time at the Lees. My teacher was Miss Deviney, the headmaster's secretary. She was very sympathetic, but perhaps not severe enough. She was a friend to many, for years after they left school. One time I missed my lesson, and later was admonished by the piano master for keeping a lady waiting. I think what kept my progress back was not wanting my practising heard by anyone. I ought to have been proud of it.
So my father went to join the school when he was 13 years old, and he arrived in Pitlochry late for the start of term because he'd had whooping cough, and he arrived wearing a kilt, and this is the very kilt that he was wearing, so it's at least 80 years old. And his name was James Holt, and there was a funny incident quite soon after he arrived when the CCF had been having a parade, and the whole school had been parading sometime during the day, and they were all dismissed, and the sergeant major or some other person shouted out, "Halt!" and the entire school froze, And he said, no, I didn't say halt, I said halt, I want to talk to Holt. And that was the way that my dad got known to everybody.
Oh, there was one real occasion. There was a chap called Weedy Wyatt. Have you heard of him? Wyatt, Weedy Wyatt.
I've heard we've got some Wyatts, but not Weedy Wyatt specifically.
No, Weedy Wyatt died a long time ago, but he was a great one for pranks, and we were all members of the JTC, Junior Training Corps, you know, it's just after the war, and we had to parade in uniform and everything in front of the hotel. And there was a couple of very tall towers overlooking where we were, and then it was all very formal. And one of the things that had to be done was to call the roll, and then they called out everybody's name, and you had to say yes, because otherwise people would take the afternoon off and wouldn't turn up, you see. And Weedy Wyatt had amassed a whole lot of toilet rolls, and when the officer called the roll, he chucked all these toilet rolls down, which was an absolute sensation.
The spring of 1945 saw the big advances of the Allied troops across Europe, especially during the Easter holidays. And then, in the summer term, at the beginning of May, the Germans signed the peace treaty. At Ballamond, on the MacDonald's estate, there was a lot of tree felling going on, and the school were invited to go there and build a bonfire by way of celebration. With the help of some ladders, a pile of brushwood about 30 feet high was constructed. This was a wonderful sight, when it was lit the evening after the declaration of peace. Whilst the fire was being built, some friends and I found a lot of floodlights, which I set up to illuminate the hotel and the fountain in the front. After the blackout, it was wonderful to be able to have lights like this.
What struck me the most about our experience coming here is what it must have been like for these kids coming here in 1940 in a very uncertain environment in Britain. And coming to this massive, luxurious pile, which is so far from anyone's belief of what a school should be like. But then they had this total uncertainty about what was going to happen to them in the future. It must have been very scary, actually.
What it's made me feel is how positive the spirit was of all the boys who came here. You know, that they were leaving an environment, travelling hundreds of miles, and they were doing it with loads of enthusiasm. They were getting stuck in. They were making the most of all the opportunities there were here. And I suppose it was indicative of a wartime spirit, but it was also indicative of a lot of positivity and everybody showing they were going to make the best of it and have the best time they could, and also keep all the spirit of the school going in a different environment.
There are Leysians who never knew the Backs, who never saw the Co Fen or played at Latham Road. But we who came back can blend these places with memories of a land of exile, a land across the border. We have not forgotten Pitlochry. We think of those who never knew the Leys at home. We think of those who never knew the Leys away. And then we say, with thankfulness, we are proud that we came back.